Well, thank you for joining today. We won't take up the whole hour for you, but uh, this has just been a kind of a cool series that we've been trying, where we just have these remote conversations with advisors and get it, filmed and have some cool content for social media and whatnot. Um, the conversations so far have kind of centered around just how each of the advisors has dealt with the pandemic and those types of things. I sent over some of those questions, but it's really meant to just be kind of a conversation with you to get your perspective as an advisor, how you've handled really 2020, which has evolved into quite an odd year. So we might just kind of flow through some of those questions, but it's really just meant to be a conversation. But obviously, thank you for joining. I think it'll be fun. But I'll kind of start off and maybe just ask kind of what I've been asking everyone is when the pandemic kind of first hit in March, how did that affect you and your practice, and kind of what was what happened when that first all went down for you?
Well, I might be I don't know, how many other advisors actually have a spouse that's a healthcare worker, but my husband works at the local hospital. He's a board certified CT tech, has been for years. He's been at the hospital over 30 years. And that first run hit, and oddly enough, in our small town, there's only like 60,000 people here. My neighbor right behind me was actually number 2 in our community. And she was really, really, really sick. And seeing that, and then sending my husband to work every day, wondering if, he was going to bring it home or what was going to happen in our household. And, his mother is almost 90, and he takes care of, all of her medical needs and things of that nature. So it was really, very emotional, I think, more than anything. And right in the middle of that, I was also working on some huge consulting agreements with some clients. And, a lot of them were like, well, we want to schedule on-site meetings. And I had to basically say, listen, my husband is exposed on a daily basis. I don't know that you want me to come to your office. If Zoom will work for you through this process, I think we maybe need to try it that way. So I did a ton of work on Zoom. And
Did they want to come? I'm sorry. Did they want to come to your office even while things were locked down, or that was further into it?
No, they wanted me to travel.
Oh.
Because that was some early in March, if you remember, not all the travel was completely shut down within the U.S. mostly. So I had one client down in Florida who was wanting me to come down. I had another one in Georgia that I was running an RFP for, that wanted me to come down there on site and meet with them. And I just said, I'd be more than thrilled to come. I just don't think, given the level of exposure that I have on a daily basis living with a healthcare worker, that you want me there on site. So we just had to make alternative arrangements, and all the clients were actually very understanding. So that was the good thing. I didn't have to worry about somebody getting upset with me because I couldn't make a meeting or I couldn't fly there to be with them. So.
Well, maybe help give me an understanding. I know a little bit about your practice, but can you help give me maybe a different breakdown of kind of, I know the type of clients you typically work with, but I mean, are your clients spread out around the country? You kind of insinuated that. Are they more local? Maybe just give me a little bit of a breakdown of your book.
Well, I have a mix. I had started a consulting practice, an ERISA consulting practice, probably, I can't even remember how many years ago now. So I pick up different clients through there that are basically non-advisory. So those clients tend to hire me basically for my ERISA knowledge and expertise to either run an RFP or help them through a voluntary compliance problem. I have other advisors who might not want me to kind of co-advise one of their clients, but they need to hire me to help them get through a situation, and the client just pays me a consulting fee to do it. So I have kind of that nest of business. But I also have been trying to restart the clock on my advisory practice. So IFP has been a great place to be able to do that.
Sure.
I was under a real significant non-solicitation agreement from the firm that I left. I was with them for 12 years and was director of business development. And we grew the practice from 70 million to 600 million. So I had a 2-year non-solicitation, but in year 4, they sent me a notice saying, please do not approach these clients or you may find yourself in court, even though it was 4 years after I had left. So I get a little skittish about going after some of my old clients because of that. I just don't, I think there's enough business out there that I don't need to, you know, divert my attention away from bringing on other clients that are not related to that prior firm.
Yeah.
So I have just a handful of clients right now, but I'm growing. I'm onboarding a brand new, huge 300 employee firm right now. I've got another client over in the Chicago area, you know, and he had different situations. You know, they actually had to go in, take all the inventory out of their store and put it into a semi truck during some of the riots that were happening, because they were a shoe store. So basically it's a running store. So they basically were afraid that somebody would bust through the windows and take every single ounce of inventory they had. So, and then he also was going through some challenges with the PPP loans. And interestingly enough, he had to figure out a way to bring down some of his cash. So we were creatively adjusting his plan design to help him throw his matching contribution in the middle of the year versus the end of the year, because he had a last day provision. So we had to go in and quickly amend the plan to account for him trying to find a way to eliminate some of that cash to be able to be eligible for the PPP. So a lot of the things that you don't normally have to do have been happening, and you just got to roll with it. You know, I think the nice thing is I've been doing this for 30 years, so nothing really shocks me anymore. And the new things kind of bring a new challenge, a new excitement to trying to figure it out for a client. So
sure. So you know, you work with obviously a good amount of employers. Have you had any clients go out of business during this time as a part of this?
No, but this new client that I'm onboarding, I started working with them early in January because their current advisor didn't understand that with the simple IRA, it's an employee count. It's not a number of accounts.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually have 300 employees, and their simple IRA had 90 people in it. So he didn't think anything of it. So the client had to go through voluntary compliance to make corrective contributions. He also didn't understand control group, and the client had another company that they weren't even covering those employees. So we started trying to fix this whole thing in January, and then we were going to install the new 401k on, I think it was April 1st was the first date we tried to target. Well, can you imagine, we were about to try and onboard 300 employees in the middle of COVID, and it just couldn't happen. So it kind of sat there, and I was just like, oh my gosh, am I not going to bring on this new client? It's a great new client. It's one of the key companies out in a little community outside of our town in an industrial area. So it's going to lead to a lot more clients out in that area for me. So I just stuck with it. And the hard thing was I had to stick with it through not getting compensated. Mm-hmm. But then when we were about ready to move forward, he called me, the client did, and he was just devastated. He said, "You have no idea what it's like, Mary." He's like, "I've lost 90% of my sales, 90%. So they actually make uniforms for the school sports programs, and they also make like T-shirts and sweatshirts and things like that for police and fire. So police and fire was diverted. They had no time to deal with it, and the schools weren't doing sports. So he lost 90% of his business. And here I'm in the middle of trying to help him figure out how to install a new 401k plan. It's just been absolutely crazy. But he actually started doing some other things. Now he's making some masks for the same groups. So the cool thing is he's lost some business, he's picked some back up. So now we're right in the middle of enrolling. Actually, next week I'll be out there on site for 4 days, helping people roll over money into the plan, just kind of helping them get online registered through Empower's website, that whole gamut. But the plan finally took hold 10/1. So, I've been basically working for this client since January with no compensation, because how do you ask somebody who just lost 90% of their business to write you a check when it's a new install? So it's been kind of dicey, but I'm excited. I think they're going to make for a really nice referral client, because I did say, hey, I'm good. We'll bite this bullet together and, get through it. So I like that I have that flexibility to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's hard because it makes you feel guilty. But I know in the investment side of things, besides that initial drop in the market, once that market returned back to normal, I mean, our businesses didn't really suffer because we kind of go along with how the assets go.
Right.
And so it's tough to see all these other great business people struggle. But hopefully hopefully his business gets back to where it should be. I know that it sounds like people like him, I know some of my friends that have businesses here, it's the ones that kind of kept at it even when stuff struggled and kind of tried different avenues of things, whether they're building masks or what have you. It's the people that didn't just sit back and say, oh, I'm being affected, and kind of took action that, were able to still maintain some type of revenue.
Yeah, I mean that's been a big component. I have a client that's a nonprofit out in California, and imagine they now are subjected to all of the California rules and regulations for cleanliness and sanitation and everything else, and it's a nonprofit. Like she said,
Mm-hmm.
we're taking on another $75,000 in expense. She's like, we used to be able to throw 10 people into a van to go out and do a project because it's a conservation group. And she's like, we can't do that anymore. So we had to buy all these vans or lease these vans to haul people to and from job sites. So, imagine a nonprofit taking on $75,000 in additional expense. I mean, it's just been horrific, I think, for a lot of companies. And until you actually have these conversations with people, to understand where they are and what's happening with their business, I guess we kind of sometimes put a little bit of a blind eye to it. So I tried to really focus in on, staying in touch with my clients and figuring things out. I also have another client that's over near Ames, Iowa, that just suffered the derecho. So we had that huge Category 4 storm in Iowa. Nobody even really in the news knew what was happening. And they're a farm out there, and it wiped out. He had like 2x4s just launched right through the side of his house. I mean, it was insanity. So first thing I did was got on the phone. I said, hey, can I come over there and help you clean brush and stuff? She's like, no, we're paying our employees to do that at this point, But I mean, it's just, I've had kind of such a diverse set of client challenges, that I really feel for my clients because they just have gone through a lot.
So I'm interested to hear how you ended up, specializing, if you will, on kind of the employer side or working with them. I'm curious as to kind of what led you to that.
Well, I started in this industry back in 1990. So when I first got out of college, I took whatever job I could get that would pay the bills, basically. So when I graduated, I was actually managing a Blockbuster video store, hysterically enough. And Cigna opened up a division here in Dubuque, Iowa, downtown, and they were seeking recent college grads to come in and start up their record keeping division. So I was one of the first 50 that was hired because of my customer service background of managing a retail store. They hired me in, and I think with the sole purpose that they wanted me to be a client manager, client relationship manager. So I worked there for about 5 years, and then I moved to Milwaukee. I worked in the institutional trust division at a bank for about a year, and we went through just a horrific transition of record keepers. So I really got to know record keeping seriously well, not by wanting to, but because that's just where my career went. And then I was fortunate enough that I was hired by a group called MJ Corporation, which is now a division of Empower. It used to be owned by Wells Fargo when I was there. And then we also had an RIA attached to that. So we actually had to get our Series 65 exams. And then when Wells bought us, we had to have the 6 and 63 as well. So I had all my security licenses, but I was just doing relationship management at a record keeping shop, basically. But we had some clients that were on the RIA side, so we were kind of required to learn that product and understand the investment side. So it just kind of happened naturally. And then I wanted to move back home. So in 2000, I moved back home, and I took a position with a local firm here. It's an RIA, and oddly enough, they actually had come up to MJ and interviewed MJ as their record keeper of choice. So when they saw that on my resume, that I was working and had already been kind of educated on the product that they were trying to build out, and then I had Dubuque connections, they hired me back here. And again, it started out as relationship management. But what I started finding is because I had that ERISA background, We had a lot of selling agreements with some large broker dealers. We worked a lot with like Northwestern Mutual, Berthel Fisher, VSR. So those advisors would call our firm, and we were a bundled ERISA 338 record keeping solution. So that was all kind of part of the program and the product that I built out. I built out the 338. I brought in the record keeping on Schwab RT, set all that up because I had that background. So we just grew leaps and bounds. And I just found that going out and meeting with clients to be just so fulfilling. Instead of just sitting on a phone call and answering, issues coming in, it was just so much nicer to develop those relationships. And to this day, some of those clients are still some of my best friends. They might be an employee somewhere else now because they were an HR manager or whatnot. But like my client in California came to me through a client who'd been an HR manager at another company and then called me when she moved companies and asked me to come in and take a look at their retirement plan. So I've kind of just gravitated there. When I spent my first 2 years in the non-solicitation area, I actually did some wholesaling of some collective investment trust funds too. So I've kind of just done the gamut. So what I find sometimes is that I'll have other advisors reach out to me, just if nothing else, to answer questions. Some actually want to case split with me. They'll say, hey, I'm not an expert in this area, but I know you are. What can we do to make things work out for both of us to come together and help this client? So I try to be a little bit more nimble in using my skill sets to kind of fit what the client's needs are versus me coming in and saying, this is what you need from me. I say, what is it that you need from me? And then we kind of work from there.
Makes sense. That's very cool. So speaking of 2020 then, or speaking to 2020, I guess, in what ways has your business changed for the better or worse? I mean, in terms of, business development, have you had more opportunities? Have you had less opportunities? What are some things that are different because of all of this, whether good or bad?
I would say the hard thing for me is I'm in a small community, and we are right now considered a red zone per the White House. So it's somewhat restricted at the moment. So the challenge I've got.
What does that mean?
It means that we've got a positivity rate that's over 10 or some other percentage. I can't remember the exact percentage, but they're calling us a red zone. So we've been all over the news. I'm in Iowa, and the governor didn't shut down our state much. And a lot of people get a little panicked over that, but they don't realize is that 80% of the employee population in our state are essential workers. So how do you shut down a state where it's all meat packing, farming, things that make the country go around, that you can't just shut that stuff down per se. So the challenge is that these companies are afraid of an outbreak. So they don't want somebody just showing up at their office and coming in for a meeting. And I love to do face-to-face. I just feel like that's a really, connection that you can get with a client when you're there that you don't get over video. So to me, that's been my biggest challenge. I was glad my new client said, no, we want you here on site to do these enrollment meetings, because that's the first time I could leave my house and go to a client's office. So that to me is the biggest challenge. I think we're getting to a point where people are starting to have a little bit different feeling towards that, which I'm pretty excited about. So I anticipate the rest of the year, I'm just going to start calling on clients and saying, how has your business been affected? Is there anything I can do to help you look at, how you've structured your retirement plan? Can we maybe look at fees and costs associated with your plan and find a better way to do it for you that doesn't cost you money, and you can, push those dollars off to another, benefit or something else that you need to keep the business open. I want to start making a lot more of those phone calls. In our community, it's always been kind of, even when I was here working for that larger firm, than where I am right now, the challenge always was that we had this local bank that basically bought and sold every 401k plan in our local community. So it was really hard to get in the front door because they always said, well, I'm with such and such. I have zero desire to talk with you. So it was really hard to do local business. But not too long ago, they sold off to another bank, and then they actually took their retirement division and sold that off to First Mercantile. So it's given me an opportunity to start to find clients that are going through this transition and are not real happy. I'm sure you just saw that I was nominated for top female advisor for Napa. I'm really hoping, if that makes its way through, that I want to put something in our local newspaper and give people an opportunity that are with that bank to say, hey, there's somebody else here in town that can help you equally as good, if not better, than what you've had to this point.
What does your gut tell you in terms of like when things can get back to a normal state of existence? And your husband being in the healthcare force maybe has better exposure too. So what is your kind of feeling on that?
I just don't know how many people are really going to get the vaccine. I was trying to think of the word. Get the vaccine when it is available. They're talking that the first round will be healthcare. So I'll be curious to see what comes to my husband's direction as far as the vaccine is concerned. Mm-hmm. You and I both know that markets hate uncertainty. So until we get through this election, it's going to be really hard for, I think, clients to just say, hey, I'm going to pick up my retirement plan that's got $10 million in it and move it to another investment in the middle of all of this. So I'm kind of just looking at the rest of the year as get all my clients, all the things I want to get done, get all my marketing where I need to get it done, get some, start of some outreach to clients that I want to get outreached, and then focus on the first quarter of next year. Because I think people just have so much on their plate right now that trying to deal with their retirement plan when they're trying to keep people employed, I almost feel like sometimes when I pick up that phone, I'm like, am I just really intruding on things that are way more important, and that's going to cause me not to have an opportunity to get this client. So I'm kind of just trying to lay low a little bit, I guess, until we see some progress.
That's actually interesting, just because the two other advisors I've spoken to kind of on the series are wealth managers, more on the individual side. And so it's definitely a different thing, right? So, I mean, you're targeting employers. This is maybe the last moment that they want to be dealing with that right now, whereas a lot of individuals that are nearing retirement are wanting to deploy assets and put more assets into the market. So it's actually been an opportunistic time, if you will, for kind of an individual wealth manager. But it's definitely interesting, and it makes sense that someone that deals with employers, well, there's probably employers that are using this time to look at this stuff. I mean, again, like you said, most of the people, especially in your area, are just trying to keep their employees employed. And like the last thing they're thinking about is the retirement plan and who's managing that. So that's definitely interesting.
The question is if I hire somebody new, how are you going to educate my employees when they all have to be 6 foot apart? For this right now, for this client, we have 100 employees we're trying to enroll. I seriously did 10 meetings out there because we could only put 10 people in a room.
Yeah.
To keep them 6 foot apart. So it's just been, going through what I'm going through with this client right now it kind of sends me a message that says, do I really want to put another client through what this client is is contending with all of this, and putting them together, does that risk them more? Because out on their manufacturing floor, they're 12 foot apart. But, and we just did a Zoom meeting yesterday for about 5 or 6 people, and they're all at home and they're all COVID positive. Yeah. So it's just so much that they're dealing with, you know what I mean? And transition is such a big thing for somebody to swallow. So I've been trying to look at plans that I can say, if I can pull their audited report and say, they're on a provider that maybe we don't have to go through a full transition. To me, that's an opportunity as an advisor then to come in and I can say, we don't have to move your plan, but at least let me come in and add some additional fiduciary services and help you clean this thing up a little bit. So that's where I'm seeing the opportunity more so than just saying, hey, move your plan in the middle of all of this to Fidelity or Empower or, that kind of a thing.
Right.
This client's actually changing their payroll at the same time. So just trying to even get this thing set up to go 10-1 has just been unbelievable.
I'm sure. Well,
just so much. I feel like I'm just overwhelming them every time I ask them that something has to be done in the middle of this. And I'll say, it's got to be done by Friday. And you can just hear the stress in their voice when I ask that. It's like,
yeah, that's definitely an interesting nuance. Well, I mean, I could tell either way that based on just a couple of things you said throughout this, that your clients are lucky to have you, because you've obviously been, very tending to the needs of the client you're launching October 1. You said you offered your other client to go help on some chores and stuff. So it sounds like, the people that are working with you right now are in good hands. And I'm sure that they appreciate that during a very tough time for a lot of people.
It costs me a lot less to maintain my existing relationships than it does for me to go build brand new ones. You know that it's that marketing
Absolutely.
phase and all the energy you put into bringing on a new client. If I'm bringing on a client, I want them to stay with me for a very long time. So, and that keeps very good, consistent, recurring revenue once you get to that space and you keep them happy.
That's absolutely right. Well, that's pretty much kind of all I wanted to cover today, Mary. I appreciate you jumping on. This has been kind of a fun conversation. It's nice to get to know you as well. You've joined more recently than some others, and I haven't gotten a chance to meet you yet. But Jeff Atchison says wonderful things, and I can see why.
He's a good guy. I like Jeff. He was probably one of the main reasons I started looking at IFP a little stronger.
That's what he's good at. But I hope you and your husband stay healthy and throughout all of this, and wish you guys the best as the vaccines roll out. And he's, obviously on the front lines. And we'll hopefully be in touch. Our conference is the beginning of next year, so hopefully we'll maybe get to see you there.
Yeah, if we're allowed to fly, that's my goal to come down. I'd like to meet everybody in person.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to that. Obviously, if there's ever anything that you need, don't hesitate to pick up the phone and give me a call as well.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Everybody's been very helpful. Very helpful.
Glad to hear it. We'll enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk soon, hopefully.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris.